Hi all, welcome to the GS Paper 1 discussion of the Pathways Academy. Today the GS Paper 1 exam was over. So we are actually discussing the history related part of the GS Paper 1. So what we are going to do is that we will be taking each individual questions, and we will be discussing how the questions has been framed, what are the areas of the syllabus from which the questions were taken, and what is the general trend, and also what is the source used by the UPSC while framing these questions. And towards the end, we will also be giving you some takeaways, some general trends considering the last few years also. So let's go on to the question paper. So the first question was, explain the role of geographical factors in the development of ancient India. So this question is actually very surprising because most in last 5 to 6 years, the questions were completely related to culture specifically. Either it will be related to art or architecture or literature. Questions specifically related to those things which are mentioned in the syllabus. But now they have taken a complete paradigm shift, and they started asking from ancient India as a whole. And it's not actually cultural part they are asking, but they are asking about ancient history. So many of you might be finding it difficult to write this answer in a very limited time, because the question was related to ancient India as a whole, role of geographical factors in the development of ancient India. So we have to think uh, how various geographical factors, for example, the formation of Himalayas, the formation of Western Ghats, the formation of Vindhyan Mountains, how they led to various developments regarding the formation of ancient India, how the society, polity, economy, etc. of ancient India has been created or has been formed because of the geographical factors. So this question has been taken very verbatimly from the old NCERT book written by R. Sharma. In the beginning chapters of the old NCERT book, there is actually a chapter which talks about the geographical factors and how it led to the creation of ancient India. But the problem is that faculties usually says that you may skip those part and you may start reading from Harappan civilization, because we actually think that the questions related to culture will be specifically asked, and normally we tend to skip those part. But UPSC asks questions from a very unconventional area from regarding this question. And the second question was, what was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism? So in the syllabus, we have a topic called important personalities. So every year they will be asking question about important personalities. For example, last year they have asked about Mahatma Gandhi and how he conducted constructive programs during non-cooperation movement and civil disobedience movement. Before that, there was question about Lord Curzon. There was question about Lord Dalhousie. There was question about uh, Subhash Chandra Bose, etc. But one specific thing regarding this question is that this is a PYQ. This question has been asked in the earlier time. The exact question, that what is the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Tagore regarding education and nationalism, was already asked by the UPSC. So if we look at the past year's questions and all in history, the questions were not actually repeating in mains. In prelims, there has been repetitions, but in mains, the repeated questions were very less. But now the takeaway is that you have to look at the previous year questions also and analyze the trend. You have to understand what are the different ideas and viewpoints and the differences of different personalities in the modern India specifically. And the third question is, bring out the socio-economic effects of introduction of railway in different countries of the world. So we actually know that the questions from post-independence history and world history has been very less. And sometimes they are not even asking any questions from these areas. For example, in 2020, there was no question from post-independence and world history. Last year, they asked one question from world history. Before that, they asked one question from post-independence history. So usually, they might be asking one question from any area, either from post-independence or from world history. So now we have got a question from world history, and question is about introduction of railway and what are the social and economic impacts in different parts of the world. So actually, if you look at the world history questions in last 5 to 6 years, we can understand that the questions are not very specific. For example, in 2017 and all, they asked about decolonization of Malay Peninsula, which was a very specific question. A candidate with very specific, very clear-cut idea about those part could only answer those questions. But here it's a very general question that someone with a vague idea could answer that. So you have to write social effect, you have to write economic effect, and how it happened in different parts of the country. See, as part of the modern Indian history, you will be studying about introduction of railway and what are the effects of India and all. So related to that, we will also be discussing, most of the history faculties will be discussing what are the impacts of railway in England. The discussion is bound to happen. And also in our syllabus, there is the mentioning about industrial revolution. So you have to understand that the industrial revolution has different phases. In some of the countries, the industrial revolution happened because of the introduction of railway. So when they are asking that what are the socio-economic effects on different countries, you have to write what are the effect of railway in England or in Europe in general. What are the effects of introduction of railway in countries like Japan and USA? What are the effects of introduction of railway in countries like colonies like India, especially in Africa and Asia? The impact of introduction of railway in all these areas are very differential and sometimes very contradictory in nature. So the question is actually very simple, and it's actually asked only for 10 marks, which means that you have to write 2 pages. So when you are writing it in different countries and when you are taking the social effect and economic effect, it actually is a somewhat easy question. So it goes with the trend that when you are studying the world history, you don't have to read any bulky book. That when you conduct a cost benefit analysis, reading a bulky book for world history is waste of time. You have to take a good class, a quality class, and also understand the very basic things of world history. That's the takeaway from this question. And the next question is also a bit surprising. It's actually 15 marker question. What are the main features of Vedic society and religion? Do you think some of the features are still prevailing in Indian society? So this question, there are some important things related to this question. One is that they shifted somewhat from the cultural part and they started asking from hardcore ancient Indian history. But one thing we have to notice that they also asked about main features of Vedic religion and Vedic society. The Vedic religion part is actually predicted because even though the religion is not mentioned in the Indian culture part, in the syllabus they are only mentioned art, architecture and literature. But religion has been asked many times. For example, in 2020 they have asked about uh, the importance of Buddhism during Pala period. And also they asked about how a religion has conceived Indian art and architecture. So religion has been a trendy question in the past 4 to 5 years. So Vedic religion that we can understand, but the Vedic society is actually hardcore ancient history. So that is actually a very huge change from the pattern they have been following. And the second part of the question, that do you think some of the features are still prevailing in Indian history? That is also interesting, but that's not actually away from the trend, because in 2014 they asked a question about Harappan civilization. So there also they asked like how the Harappan civilization are providing inputs to the present day urbanization. So when you study history, you have to actually compare and contrast those period with the present times. So that question is somewhat a type of stormy type of question which you should have analyzed, which you should have thought about while reading the old NCERT book and all. And the question is actually not very difficult because they have verbatimly taken it from the old NCERT book. Old NCERT book has that thing in it. But you have to understand one thing also. The Vedic period is not mentioned in the new NCERT book. So the students keep on asking like whether we should only stick with the new NCERT and completely abandon the old NCERT. But we get this takeaway that UPSC is still going with the old NCERT book. Most of the questions are directly taken from the old NCERT book, especially the first question, the role of geographical factors in the development of ancient India. It has a chapter in R. Sharma's old NCERT book with the same name. So we see that UPSC is taking questions from old NCERT book and not very much from the new NCERT book. And the next question is might be one of the toughest question that might have come in GS paper 1. So the question was, what were the major technological changes introduced during Sultanate period? How did these technological changes influence the Indian society? See, that question is also very specific, and most of the aspirants, even veteran aspirants, might not have been prepared for such type of questions from the medieval India. We are expecting cultural part to be asked, either art or architecture or literature. They have been asking questions from medieval India in the last few years. For example, they have asked about medieval temple sculpture in the last year. They are asked about Persian literary sources and all, but that's quite predictable. But here they are asked about major technological changes, and this actually uh, showcases a different trend in the ongoing GS paper, that most of the questions are sort of optional based. It's not just in history, but in other subjects also, the questions which are asked in optional are actually asked in the GS. This major technological changes introduced during Sultanate period has been asked in optional subject. So they have taken the same question and asked in GS. But there is one silver lining, or one thing that you should take note of. Although it seems like there is this question is very out of the book or very difficult, it's actually mentioned in old NCERT book of Satish Chandra, which means that a thorough reading of old NCERT books in ancient and medieval is now necessary. You can't skip. It's like UPSC is directly saying to you that you should read cover to cover. You shouldn't do some elimination, you shouldn't do something like that. You have to do cover to cover analysis of the old NCERT books. And the last question was that how did colonial rule affected the tribals in India, and what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? So the tribal response to the colonial oppression. So this question is something most of the aspirants had actually written, because it's not very difficult. It's given in Spectrum. It's given in old NCERT book written by Bipin Chandra. It's given in India's Struggle for Independence. It's there in Shekhar Bandyopadhyay's From Plessy to Partition. So very bookish question. Anyone can answer that. But you have to understand from which part of the syllabus the question has been taken. See, tribal response to colonial oppression comes under the different stages of freedom movement, and also important contribution and contributors to the India's freedom struggle. Regarding the tribal response, you have to note that this is the first stage of nationalist movement that happened in India. Even before the formation of Congress, the first anti-British programs conducted in India were actually tribal rebellions. So in that aspect, you have to understand that tribal rebellion forms a very important phase or part of India's colonial struggle. So you should understand that what are the different phases, different contributors. For example, they have asked about what are the contribution of women in the earlier year. They have asked now the what are the contribution of tribal people. They may ask about what are the contribution of foreign people, or maybe northeast people, or the subaltern people. The questions like this should be predicted from the pattern that has been coming in the recent times. So these are the major questions that came in the history part related to GS paper 1. Now there are some important takeaways. The first takeaway is that the marks from history part is 75 out of 250. But if you are actually reading history, you are spending considerable amount of time in history itself. For example, you are studying ancient, you are studying medieval, you are studying modern history, world history, post independence history. but the number of questions and the mark actually is less when it comes to history. I think that it should have been around 80 to 85, but in the last 5 years, it's only 75 marks from a history part in GS paper 1. And the second takeaway is that the emphasis on culture. More questions are being asked from culture than modern history. Aspirants even now think that they have to focus on modern history and students study culture. But the cultural part has taken a huge leap in last 4 to 5 years. For example, in 2020, they asked about around 50 marks out of total 75 marks in Indian history part. In 2022, that is last year, they asked 40 marks out of total 75 marks from history part. This time also they asked about 40 marks out of 75 marks from history. So cultural has more important than modern Indian history when it comes to mark distribution in GS paper 1. And the another takeaway is that you shouldn't study too much about post-independence history and world history. The questions from post-independence and world history has been very less. Even if they are asking those questions, it's of a general trend, not very specific question and all. You just have to have a vague general idea about post-independence and world history. So that's enough. You don't have to read any bulky book, and that's actually not good if you look at a cost-benefit analysis. And regarding culture part, there is a very huge change in the pattern or trend. Earlier, they used to ask cultural questions based on the syllabus. It will be either art or architecture or literature or religion. But now they have asked questions from hardcore ancient and medieval history. So it gives an idea that you shouldn't not just look into the culture part. You have to look to the hardcore ancient and medieval history also. Actually, this makes the GS paper part a bit tough because you have to study more. And the next important thing is that what are the sources from which the UPSC is asking question? You have to stick more with the old NCERT book even now. The questions has been taken verbatimly from old NCERT book written by Satish Chandra, Biban Chandra and R. Sharma. And the questions from new NCERT books are actually very less. And the another trend is that it's not just in history, but in all subject, we can see that the question has a optional type of nature. Most of the questions, PYQs from optional has been put in the GS paper. So that actually make the exam more difficult, which means that you have to study and you have to have conceptual clarity regarding all subject if you want to gain mark. So these are the important things that we have to discuss regarding the GS paper 1, especially history part. So I hope that you will incorporate these takeaways in your presentation, in your preparation in the future. Thank you.
The GS paper 1 exam of civil service examination has happened today, and I will be discussing you the social issues segment of GS paper 1. There are 6 questions from this particular area and a total of 75 marks. Now let's look into the questions. Let me go for the 10 mark questions first. The first question actually was about the marriage as an institution. Marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India. So, do you think marriage as an institution, marriage as a sacrament losing its value in modern India? This was not a very expected question because this is an area from the sociology optional. Of course, when we study social issues, we study about joint families and the larger nature of Indian society. But this question was a little bit too specific, I would say. The next question again was a bit of surprise. This was explain why suicide among young women is increasing in Indian society. Again, suicide, we don't exactly study this in deep for your general studies paper, but this comes in the sociology optional paper. There is a third question which again I would say a surprise, that is child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones. Discuss its impact on the socialization of children. So again, socialization of children is a topic which directly comes in your sociology optional, not in your general studies social issues. So all the three questions directly related to family and related institutions. So I would say that a person without sociology background would have find it a little bit more difficult to manage even though you understand the question. Now let me check the 15 markers before I give my comments overall. Among the 15 markers, the first question was, does urbanization lead to more segregation and marginalization of the poor in Indian metropolis? This one is an easy question because urbanization is directly in the syllabus. You would have studied about all the problems of urbanization. So with that information, you will be able to handle this one. Next question is, why is caste identity in India both fluid and static? UPSC has been asking detailed questions on caste from this social issue segment. So normally people would have prepared well for that. So even if this question which could be repeated in your optional paper, still people who have studied the past trends of this particular segment would have prepared well for this, and writing this caste nature both fluid and static, that most of the people would have been managed. That's what I believe. The last question of this segment is, discuss the impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity and communalism. Again, in our syllabus of general studies, the communalism is mentioned. Ethnic identity is not very specifically mentioned, even though we study it under culture. But again, this comes in the sociology paper too. So with whatever you know about communalism, whatever you know about ethnic communities, this question can be managed, but again it's an advantage for people with sociology optional. So from this year's question, actually we could see that this social issue segment, all the areas have not been given adequate importance because we study like around 10 concepts in this particular area, but we could see that there has been questions from very few. In fact, most of the questions were from the salient features of Indian society segment. They didn't ask anything specific on globalization and other specific issues like population, etc. So, considering this in mind, I generally suggest that people who prepare for the social issue segment of general studies should study a sociology paper 2, the Indian society part book as well, because question can be come from any part. I generally recommend the Sociology of Indian Society written by CNS Rao, that is CN Shankar Rao for this particular thing. The book is not very popular in the northern part of India, but it is quite popular in down south. He is a professor from Mangalore University. We use this book for sociology optional as well. So I recommend this book so that you get an overall insight into things. Otherwise, these questions all can be very well managed by people with sociology optional, but people without that background, I seriously recommend this book as well for your future preparation. Thank you for watching.
Yes, we have some other questions, general questions from geography. So most of the questions are general in nature, but some questions like we have a factual questions like you need to know the formation and all, how fjords are formed. Fjords, this is a glacial landform, so how it is formed and why do they constitute some of the most picturesque areas of the world. So we need to have that kind of factual idea about the landform. So if you know the general idea of these questions, you can make out very easily. So discuss the consequences of climate change on the food security in tropical countries. So here we have 3 keywords: climate change, food security, and tropical countries. So we need to address how climate change impact the food security of a particular region, that is tropical countries. So it's pretty actually you can make out very easily. Like you need to start with an introduction about food security, and in the body you can say like some of the negative impacts by climate change on food security of the tropical countries, like crop yield gets reduced because of some certain climatic factors, for example, drought, flood and all. And the pest and disease gets activated, especially during high temperature time. Like you have seen the prices of tomato, potato, and cucumber has raised because of some kind of disease happened in tomatoes. So these are the negative impact. Like water scarcity is another very important feature. Like and other features like food price gets increased. So these are the impacts on people who are living in tropical areas. So food security is greatly impacted by climate change nowadays. Okay, so in the conclusion part, you can somehow make out a conclusion on sustainable agriculture and improving water management system and climate resilient. There is a high demand of climate resilient crops should be grown. So these are the best points you can quote in conclusion. So the sixth question: how fjords are formed? Why do they constitute some of the most picturesque areas of the world? 150 words question. So this is a direct question from landforms. So fjord is a landform created by glacier. You know that it's nothing but the glacial trough or the U-shaped valley submerged by seawater. So you need to explain what fjord is. Then why do they constitute some of the most picturesque areas of the world? So it's all about that. You need to explain generally, like it has some symmetrical reflections, and the landscape is with spectacular sceneries and all. And it is with clear water because this water is coming directly from the glaciers, and these are the place where sea meets the glacier, and it is good for tourism. And some of the naval basins, seaports of the world, like Norway and all, see they make seaports inside this fjords that is in the U-shaped valley. And it's good for some recreational activities like kayaking, hiking. It's a very good, it's one of the most favorite places for climbers of the mountains and all. And it's good for some of the best photographers. I mean, good place for photographers, especially landscape photographers and all. That's what these areas are very famous. So say it's a 150 word question. That's also a general one. The seventh question in GS1 paper is why is the southwest monsoon called Purvaya or easterly in Bhojpur region? How has this directional seasonal wind system influenced the cultural ethos of this region? It's a 150 words question. So this question is a region specific question. So if you know that this Bhojpur region is somewhere in the northern plains of Ganga, and it is the region which borders with the Nepalese area, Nepal region and all. So if you know that thing, you can directly answer this question. So this here, why southwest monsoon is called Purvaya, that is easterly. So from the climatology we know that. So the wind gets its origin from the wind gets its name from its origin. For example, if the wind is coming from east, it is known as easterly. The same way, Purvaya indicates easterly because southwest monsoon has two branches. So, one branch goes through Arabian Peninsula, I mean Arabian Sea, that is parallel to western coast, and the other branch is going through the eastern coast of the India, and eventually when it struck with the Bangladesh Himalayan region and all, so it will slightly turn towards left, that is towards west, and it goes through the northern plains of India, that is Gangetic plains of India. So when it goes through northern plains of India, the people in the northern plains, that is in Bhojpur region, they will call this wind as an easterly wind, that is Purvaya. So that is the question, that is the reason behind this, the naming. So, and the second part of the question, how has this directional seasonal wind system influenced the cultural ethos? So you can, it's nothing but southwest monsoon. That means the major monsoon, that is, our rainy season from June to September. So you can compare it with the monsoon festivals, cultural practices, etc. And second thing is rice, plowing season and all. You can make out the list of some crops. You can give some examples like rice and all. and some other cultural activities like songs, folklore, traditions. You can use this term. I mean, most of the people living in the Bhojpuri region is using this term in their folklore, music, drama, and many other festivals and all. So that's the question about. Next is the 14th question of GS1 paper, that is 250-word question. So comment on the resource potential of the long coastlines of India and highlight the status of natural hazard preparedness in the region. It's a 250-word question. So you have two question part. First one is about the resource potential of the long coastlines of India. As we know that, like in Indian Peninsula, and if you consider both Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar, you have almost 7,500 kilometers of long coastline. It is very huge. So that's what we have a very good resource potential in the coastlines of India, both in the western coast and the eastern coast, and the coastlines of Andaman and Lakshadweep as well. So we have many potential like tidal energy, fishing, and many other ports. So we have many ports both in eastern and western coastlines. And yes, of course, we have some other minerals found from the continental shelves of the coastlines. So you can list out all these points. And in the second part, highlight the status of natural hazard preparedness in the region. In the last year also, we had this kind of question like cyclone warning system, how IMD named cyclone warning system, how they actually color coded this system. So the same way, here they have asked the natural hazard preparedness in this region. So it includes both the cyclone, other weather phenomena, and tsunami, and many other features like ocean, erosion and all, coastline erosion because of the waves and tides. So we need to highlight all this preparedness status of this coastal region. So it's a 250-word question. So the next question is, identify and discuss the factors responsible for the diversity of natural vegetation in India. So this is the first part. And the second part is, assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions of India. So a bit factual one, because we need to know the rainforest of India, the location and all. So it's a 250 words question. So in the first part, it's all about diversity of natural vegetation in India. As we know, we have a lot of type of forest are seen in India because of the geographical diversity. So the factors are, first of all, the geographical diversity, that is topography. So India has one of the biggest mountain system in the world, and some areas are very flat like Gangetic Plain. And if you come to peninsular India, it's all about plateaus. You have the biggest plateau in the world, that is Deccan Plateau, and we have a very big coastline from Ran of Kutch to Sundarbans, and we have some islands low. Some of the islands are volcanic in origin, and others are, Lakshadweep is coral in origin. So topography itself plays a very important role in diversity of natural vegetation in India. And the second is climate. We have varied climate. For example, during June, that is summer season, will get a very good rainfall from southwest monsoon. It is accompanied by northeast monsoon in the next 2 months, and then we have very harsh winters in the continental part. At the same time, peninsula experience varied climate. So climate is a very important factor. It includes wind too, some local winds like mango showers in western coastal region, coffee blossoms in Karnataka, Kalbaisaki in Bengal region, and we have Lu in northern plains. So this contributes a lot in natural vegetation diversity. So we have coastal effect too. Some of the areas of India is in coastal area, and some here we can see a lot of mangroves, especially on the deltas like Kaveri, Krishna, Ganga Brahmaputra delta, that is Sundarbans and all. That makes this is the biggest delta in the world. So you can quote all points. And the rock system is also very important. And we have some of the biggest rivers of the world like Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus and all. So that makes the natural vegetation very diverse. In the second part, so it's all about assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforests. First, we need to locate the rainforest of India. For example, Nicobar Islands. So it's very near to equatorial region. That's what you can see, varied number of diverse animals, plants, etc. And the Nicobar Islands are known for its endemism. some of the animals living in these islands are not found anywhere in the world. So endemism is it's a very important point. And of course, this rainforest region, like in Northeast and Nicobar Islands and all, it comes under UNESCO World Biodiversity Hotspot and all. And you can mention ecosystem resources also. Some of the herbal plants and all, these are all important. So this is all about the 15th question. So the 16th question of GS1 paper: why did human development fail to keep pace with the economic development in India? It's a question from human development, that is economic development, human geography. So it's a 250 word question. So it's a very general kind of question. So you can list out poverty, you can list out inequality, educational access to educational system, social infrastructure lack. So you can mention all these kind of problems that is we are facing India right now. So you can mention population growth. These points are must one. So these are the points you can note down in this question. So it's a general. This question is very general in nature. And the 17th question: from being net food importer in 1960s, India has emerged as a net food exporter to the world. Provide reasons. So here directly they are asking the reasons. It's a 250 word question. You can start introduction with onset of green revolution and all in 1960s. So the green revolution is all about hybrid seeds, genetic engineering research and development, and fertilizer use, chemical fertilizer and pesticide use, undermining environment and all. So you can note down all these kind of points, like private sector participation, global market access. So these are some of the most important point here in this question. They are asking these kind of reasons. So it's also a very general, this question is a very general in character. So you need to have some perspective. That's the most important thing here to note down. Okay. This is all about geography questions. Most of the questions are directly from the subject itself, geography. That means about the questions from fjord, that minor landform, that is fjord, glacial landform. So, and we had questions related with the environment, like natural vegetation and climate change, about food security, and also we had almost general kind of questions, not analytical one, or maybe not in a factual way. So it's the questions are almost like okay. So as we have seen in the previous year, the questions are almost like that only. Okay. Thank you very much.